You have arrived at Planet Who Doesn't Have a Podcast.
Welcome back to Who Doesn't Have a Podcast, and this week we're talking all things the war between the land and the sea. So to catch you all up, the war between the land and the sea has been confirmed to be releasing on BBC iPlayer on the 7th of December. It's created by Doctor Who showrunner Russell T Davies. It is sort of what we were discussing before, the last gasp of the Doctor Who BBC Disney deal, where it was part of that initial tranche of sort of episode orders from Disney. So once the war between the land and the sea ends, the official partnership between the BBC and Disney will end. What we wanted to have a conversation about was, what if it's really successful? What happens then? Does Disney still want to be involved? Because they're not involved with Doctor Who. They've made that decision. So yeah. I'm joined by Jerome. Jerome's back from his...
Yeah, I finally escaped the time vortex. I made it back to 2025.
Where have you been? What year have you been in? Have you been in the year 2027? And Doctor Who's been picked up by HBO Max, but weirdly, the war between the land and the sea is still co-funded by Disney, and it's this mismatch of stuff.
Yeah, I had a look forward into the future, and I saw more of the same. No, do you know what? Interestingly, so I actually have been in the US of A and in the land of Disney, funnily enough, and they have a lot of like different eras, like all the way from 1920s Hollywood to, which actually, in fairness, made me think of Lux. Like, there were a lot of the buildings and a lot of the kind of set pieces and models that had been created in the Disney parks that were like I was kind of looking around with like the sort of the vehicles and the kind of cinema kind of settings and things, and I was like, they have got this pretty spot on. So that was quite nice, because I was looking desperately for a Doctor Who link. I was trying to find anything like merchandise or any sort of models or anything, like maybe just a blue British police box. And sadly to say, I did not come across such. But who knows? Maybe by the time we reach 2027, that will have changed. Maybe there'll be a last gasp push for like end of line merchandise for Doctor Who that was hidden away in the first place. Who knows?
The real sign that Disney weren't going to continue their partnership with the BBC for Doctor Who was, I think Dan went to Disneyland or something, or didn't he go to Disneyland Florida or something?
Yeah.
And he said, we had him desperately search around for any Doctor Who merchandise or any indication that Doctor Who was on Disney, and there was nothing. So we were like, oh, God.
Mike, maybe it's third time lucky. Maybe like Dan's been, I've been. Maybe you need to go, and you'll be the one who like finds you find like, I don't know, a sonic screwdriver just like in a ride or something. It's just been like funneled away. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because just quickly before we go on to the main topic. Like, I've been thinking about this. Like, Doctor Who isn't a stranger to merchandise, right? Or particularly, like, interactive kind of, like, video games might be a push, but definitely kind of, you know, like, digital sort of platforms for, like, interactive gaming or sites and things. And I think they've got a new one coming out for Doctor Who Day. I might be wrong about that, but on the 23rd of November, I think, to kind of honour the broadcast day, they thought they had to have something coming out, so they've got like some sort of platform coming out. But I was thinking, like, because Disney are all about merchandise, they are like the fathers of merchandise. Like, do you think that was an element they were hoping to push more? Because obviously you've got the show, but do you think, like, because I went there recently and it's like Star Wars, for instance, there's lightsabers everywhere, there's like models of, you know, all sorts of Star Cruisers or like masks or costumes or whatever. Because there's enough in that of Doctor Who to kind of fill that gap, but it never really sort of came to fruition. Do you think that was another reason why they kind of just went, no, we're not into this?
Yeah, maybe. I think the expectation was that Doctor Who could become a real global sort of on the scale of Star Wars or something like that. You know, specifically the Star Wars TV output. I was thinking they thought that Doctor Who, because it's got its foundations and it's got its core fan base and it's got name recognition, I think they probably thought that they could build it into like a global brand like that. I think the BBC and Russell T Davies, if he stays on, probably will still try and do that. It just didn't work with Disney. But it just didn't happen, did it? It just didn't land with the sort of thud that you thought it was going to land with. It didn't sort of ignite. I think it probably just kept talking to its fans.
Mm.
And it didn't really do what they needed it to do. To be honest, I think if Disney had bothered to renew it and actually invest in it further, it probably would do. They just needed to invest more time and more energy. I know they commissioned 2 series of it, and from their perspective, they were probably thinking, this hasn't performed the way we wanted it to. We've got no indication that it's going to start performing like that, so why would we stay on? But I think these things just take time. And I'm specifically thinking back to when Russell T Davies's first era, when he built up those first 4 series and it ended in The Stolen Earth.
Mm.
And by that point, you had 2 spin-offs. You had Sarah Jane Adventures and Torchwood, and they all came together in this Doctor Who finale, and it felt like Marvel before Marvel.
Yeah,
I just think they needed, if they were really serious about it, they should have just given it more time. But hey, maybe they still do it, just with a different partner.
Maybe that's where they were going as well with the war between the land and the sea. Like maybe that's what it was, that kind of threading that was kind of happening. But I suppose, and this is ground we've already treaded, so I won't stick on it too long, but it's like the gaps. I think whether like series 1 to 4, like it felt like there was Doctor Who material every year, or there was something, do you know what I mean, to kind of keep you in the loop. But I suppose with this Disney deal, there has just been so many gaps and kind of pausing and kind of uncertainty that it's a lot harder to kind of thread that level of storytelling in a coherent manner, because by the time you've seen like the new material, you're kind of going, oh, that's in relation to, or how that links back to, or all of this thing. And of course, I think they were trying to maybe speed up that process with the flashbacks, with the amount of like with the toy maker and with like Sutek and things. There were these constant relations to like, this happened in 1978, or this happened in like, the 80s, kind of mid 80s and things. And yeah, it probably, when you think about it, it kind of, maybe the writing was on the wall earlier than most of us realised a little bit.
Yeah, I do. It also doesn't help when things like your lead actor doesn't stick around, And, that might be unfair criticism, because think back to 2005. Christopher Eccleston didn't stick around, but then David Tennant made it more popular than it's ever been. So that it's not, but I just think, you just need people to stick around so the audience can get to know them, and then it just builds out this whole thing. But the rumour is that they were going to film a 3rd series. They had a completely different ending to series 2, which has leaked, essentially.
Well, that's been confirmed, hasn't it?
It's been confirmed, yeah. Ncuti Gatwa was staying on, but I think Disney having cold feet and not confirming whether they were going to do anything with the IP for as long as they did, I don't think helped. I think he had so many offers and he was so in demand. Yeah. Hopefully they get it right next time. And also, so let's go into the war between the land and the sea, because this is interesting. Like we said at the top, this was something that Disney ordered with BBC. It's a spin-off, very much, of the first 2 series of Doctor Who that we've just seen, the ones with Ncuti Gatwa. It's co-produced by Disney. It's got loads of Disney money. It features all the same cast and characters from Unit. It's got the Unit headquarters. It is very much set in the same world, but it will be, unless it's really successful, the last sort of flame of the partnership between Disney and the BBC, which I just find quite interesting, because looking ahead, if it is successful, if people really like it, I can imagine a situation in which Disney say, oh, we want to continue doing that, but they just won't be in the main show. And just to kickstart the discussion, Jerome, so Russell T Davies has done a profile with Empire about it, so he is really plugging this show.
Mm.
And he basically said that he wanted to show the BBC what this universe is capable of. Now, to me, that doesn't necessarily sound like a man who's quitting. If he's saying this is coming out, we've worked really hard on it, we love it, and he has said that before. He says he thought they captured magic in a bottle, and they've watched the edits and they've been like, this is amazing. If this is just as good as something like Children of Earth, Tortured Children of Earth, and he's saying things like he wants to show the BBC just how good Doctor Who and things set in the Doctor Who universe can be, that doesn't sound like a man who's giving up on the show or the showrunnership. Over to you.
Well, no, I don't think it does. I mean, if Russ was shown anything, I think in his career, Doctor Who or otherwise is that he is someone who challenges and who I think is incredibly passionate in all of his works and is a fantastic writer, fantastic storyteller. But I think as well with the amount of criticism that's sort of been labelled at not just him but the show, I would say, in like the last couple of years, I think that might kind of like, I don't know, motivate him or kind of really sort of re-energise him to be like, actually, no, I do know what I'm doing and I do have plans for this universe. I do want to build things in a way that would, make the show go beyond to what it is. I don't think they've been helped by Disney, as you've covered, but I think ultimately, I think the Children of Earth, like you mentioned there, Children of Earth was so good because it was able to take place in a slightly darker realm than maybe mainstream Doctor Who would be able to, and it told a story that I think was slightly scarier, slightly darker, that kind of fell in with the vibes of like the original Doctor Who, that, kind of terrified children. Like that's the whole thing when the show first set out, was like making kids kind of hide behind their sofa, what the Doctor, what sort of adversaries they'd come up against. But it never kind of lost its way of being part of the Doctor Who universe. And that's what's so good about Children of Earth, while kind of exploring those characters. I think like the War Between the Land and the Sea ultimately is going to be decided on how good the storytelling is, more than anything, because I think like the show has shown previously, like you can do Doctor Light episodes like Blink, you can do spin-off shows like Sarah Jane, that are very, very popular with fans and allow you to kind of invest in characters in a way you aren't able to in the main show, and give characters their time to to shine. And I think like there's absolutely every potential for this show to be really, really good. It's just a case of what story are they going to tell? I mean, like the Sea Devils, who I know are no longer being referenced to as the Sea Devils. There was that whole thing that came out, I think, was it their Homo Aqua or something like that? That's like the new term for them. And I know that's already courted controversy and some people are already losing their minds over that and things. But, they have been an interesting adversary historically in the show. So it'll be interesting to see their story expanded alongside the kind of the human aspect and to, I know there hasn't been too much released, but I know it's kind of going to have an environmental focus, which could be interesting. I know that's going to play like quite a huge part on it. And it makes me think of the Matt Smith two-parter with the Silurians, I think from his first series, if you remember it, that kind of real kind of human and Silurian clash in terms of like the battle for the Earth kind of mix. So I think it's going to be something maybe in that style, and I quite enjoyed that two-parter. I know it wasn't universally loved, but I thought there were some interesting concepts in it. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it could be I think what is important is obviously it's going to have Doctor Who references. There's been all these teasers that maybe a Doctor will appear or something. But I think what's important is it never loses focus from the fact that it's its own show. I think that's what's really important. Not trying to just be, I don't know, like a side dish. I know it's like a spin-off show, but it needs to tell its own story, I think, for it to be majorly successful. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I will reserve judgment on either way until I see it, because really we don't know loads about it, and maybe Doctor Who going through a bit of a muddy patch is the best thing, potentially, because it can just be like, right, well, we're going to do something different. We're going to break from the fact that, the main actor has gone or has taken a break from it, or we're going to go away from the fact that the stories are all a bit muddled and you've brought back all these legacy villains and in some cases literally just chucked them over your shoulder like they weren't there in the first place. And I think they're just like, it'd be good to just maybe just have a clean break from that. Whether it does or not, I don't know. Is it going to be more of the same of what we've seen? In which case it might be a bit disappointing, because not only have we had a massive break from the end of that series, but if it just goes on to be more of the same, it'll be, people might be like, oh, I'll tune in to give it a chance because it's been so long, and then within the first half an hour be like, no. So I'm hopeful that it will be good. I'm hopeful that it's telling an original story, so maybe that will give it a different entrance, because Doctor Who must be one of the hardest shows to write for, right? In terms of the amount of lore and the amount of respect you've got to have for things that have happened before, and also the bravery on some measure to be like, do you know what? I'm going to chuck that away. I don't care that the Valeyard was one of the greatest stories ever written. Doesn't work in my world. Get rid. You know, all of that stuff. I'm still crying inside. Yeah, I don't know. My point was going somewhere, but I'm going to stop it there. It's to let you respond.
To pick up on a couple points. So, first of all, the way that I've read these articles about the Sea Devils being renamed Homo Aqua isn't Russell T Davies saying it's racist to say Homo Aqua and giving us a moral lecture like in the real world. I think it's a plot point within the show. I think that there is going to be an environmental element to this, and I think the overarching plot might be a little obvious. It might be that Homo Aqua are have become fuming with the human race for polluting their world, the sea. So they're coming to claim the earth, maybe because they haven't got a home anymore, or their home is unlivable. So I think what he's saying is that it's become racist in the world of Doctor Who to call them sea devils, because that indicates that they're a monster. And I think in this show, it's going to be much more ambiguous who the real monsters are. I think from the Homo Aqua's sea devils perspective, human beings, Homo sapiens, are very much going to be the sort of the villains. That's my opinion, and that's probably what I think he was saying. There was a lot of backlash when he announced it, but I think it's a plot point in the show. And two, I think I've looked at the air time for it, and it's going to air at 8:30 p.m. And I retrospectively looked at the air time of Torchwood Children of Earth, and that was 9 p.m. So obviously just on Watershed. So I think we're getting a very similar style of show where there's going to be adult themes to explore. There's going to be adult relationships. It's going to be very different to the sort of all family version of Doctor Who. And it's going to be more like, I doubt it's going to be like the first two series of Torchwood. Torchwood, you know, excuse the pun, really came in with a bang. I don't know if you remember the second episode of Torchwood, but it was like a monster who was having sex with people, and then in like nightclubs, and then the people would blow up. So it really did.
Oh my God, yeah.
Do you remember that? It really did. It really did land with a bang.
Yeah.
But the third series of Torchwood, Children of Earth, as we discussed, was an event mini-series, which is what this is, and it told one story over 4 to 5 episodes, and there's only a half-hour difference between when they're due to start airing in the evening. So I think we're going to get a very similar style of show. And I'm really looking forward to seeing some of these peripheral characters like Kate Lethbridge-Stewart in a context that isn't necessarily Doctor Who. I'm really looking forward to seeing what that is like as a fan of the show and the universe.
We got a really interesting take on Kate in the last series of Doctor Who, the Doctor Light show with
Lucky Day. Was it called Lucky Day?
Yeah. And it was actually really interesting what they did with her. It just, because we definitely saw a darker side, and to sort of like the idea of revenge and really just, you know, like wanting to like get this guy, which was interesting just to see like a different flavour to that character, rather than just being the sort of the unit military leader who just goes, right, we are going to support the Doctor in any sort of best way we can. It was nice to see her get that moment where it was like, no, I'm going to get you. Like, actually, this is personal now. You've made this personal, like, that I'm going to make it my mission to destroy you. And I think that was really like an interesting just change. And then, you know, there's obviously the section with Ruby, which kind of like remedies that. But no, I think it will be interesting to, because I think Kate Lethbridge-Stewart is a really interesting character and like a really good character. And I love the fact that they've kind of taken the Brigadier's legacy and kind of run with it through her but done their own thing with it at the same time. I'm also interested, like the Sea Devils, or Homo Aqua, however you want to you know, whichever way you want to describe them. Hoping that they get their time in the sun and out of the sea. Mainly because, like, let's be honest, Jodie Whittaker's, it wasn't even a Christmas special. What was it, like an October, November special or something? It was not good. Like, it was not good.
That's where we saw them last.
It was the pirate. It was the pirate episode. Like, it was not great. And I know they've had like it appears from the trailer and it appears from the images released by the BBC that like the appearance, the aesthetic is much changed from what we saw, and that was only like 2 years ago. Or maybe more than 2 years ago. But anyway, like, it wasn't that long ago.
The rumour about that episode, was it called The Legend of the Sea Devils?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, probably.
I'd have to go back and rewatch it. I won't. But the rumour about that episode is that it was, in typical BBC fashion, they had absolutely no idea what they wanted to do with Doctor Who at that time. And they asked Chris Chibnall to come up with an episode to bridge the gap between, I think, the end of Flux, or that New Year's special that they did, and then Jodie Whittaker's last episode. So they got The Legend of the Sea Devils out there. But the rumour was that it was rushed, and it was, I'd have to go back and rewatch it, but I think I read articles where people were zooming in on like unfinished VFX shots and stuff. So yeah, I remember watching that and thinking, I don't think I'm going to watch that again. But I don't know, maybe I like a bit of revisionist history on this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And you get dud episodes, like, we've talked about enough of them. But, like, yeah, it was just a shame, because, like, that was a legacy villain. I know, you know, when I talk to people of that generation, or, like, family members who watched Doctor Who in, like, the 70s, like, the Sea Devils were a big villain. And I know that people talk, I think it's, so I think the original Sea Devils episode is being aired the same day as the first episode of The War Between the Land and the Sea. I think it's on BBC4 or something. And like, people always talk about that first shot where they're walking out of the sea, and they say as well, like, the reference to the Sea Devils is because the humans at that time who were watching this event happen, they're kind of referring as to this thing happening where, like, there's this invasion coming from the sea, and they kind of know it as, like, fishermen's tales of, like, demons and devilry kind of out on the oceans and ships going missing and stuff, and it's like, oh, these Sea Devils. I think that's, like, where it kind of comes from, but it's a really, like, it's a seed, and it's kind of like a notion that has stayed with people, like, in that sort of element of Doctor Who. So it'll be interesting to see, like, it'll be really interesting to see them updated for an audience today, and kind of like, if it's similar to the Silurian aspect, I think it could be really interesting. But I'm sure somewhere along the line, there's definitely going to be some sort of romantic endeavour between a Homo Aqua and probably Russell Tovey's character or something. I think you just know it's coming. I just get the impression it's coming. I don't know.
Think that's been I think it's been confirmed. It's quite interesting. The more that we discuss it, the more excited I am. I guess I'm a bit of a victim of all of this toing and throwing about what's happening with Doctor Who. Really left this spin-off. I don't think it's done well for the promotional opportunities of this spin-off. But hey, it's going to be on BBC One. They're giving it a primetime slot. It could do really well. But let's remind you, Jerome, what came after Torchwood Children of Earth, which did very well?
It was Miracle Day, wasn't it?
Torchwood Miracle Day, which was a co-production with the Stars Network. And we can all agree that something went wrong with Torchwood Miracle Day. They tried to follow the same formula. I think it was like 10 episodes instead of Children of Earth's. I can't remember how many episodes Children of Earth was, but yeah, that did not go down very well. But again, I was a diehard and I really liked it, but it was very American. So we will see. I'm excited. So, final question for you before we wrap this one up. Everything that's going on with Doctor Who. Obviously, when War Between the Land and the Sea was being made, Ncuti Gatwa was very much still the Doctor, and it was probably very much still on for a third series. He confirmed basically as much on the Graham Norton show. So, do you think, like in other Doctor Who spin-offs of times gone by, that the Doctor is going to appear in this? And I'll give you the precedent. So, at the end of Torchwood Series 1, you hear the sound of the TARDIS. I remember loving that as a kid. Do you remember the hand starts glowing and you hear the TARDIS, and then Jack goes running for the TARDIS, and then he next appears in, is it Utopia? I think it was Utopia. Amazing world building. And then I think in the Sarah Jane Adventures, David Tennant was basically in it for a 2-part episode with the Trickster, I believe. And then Matt Smith also appeared in the Sarah Jane Adventures. And then in Class, remember Class, Jerome?
I don't really, but yes.
In Class, Peter Capaldi fully appears. I think it's the first or second episode. Considering everything that's going on with Doctor Who at the minute, and the fact that currently Billy Piper is the Doctor, does the Doctor appear in The War Between the Land and the Sea?
I think given the precedent you've set, Michael, I think it's entirely possible, yeah. Do I want it to happen? I'm not sure I do. purely because, not because, like, an appearance by the Doctor is always exciting. It's always exciting, and especially in the spin-offs, because a lot of the time you don't see it coming. It's like, and it's kind of how they're going to affect that episode. But I think the reason, I just think if there was a Doctor appearance in this, it would deter a lot from the series. And I think it would become more about the future of Doctor Who and what's going on. Like, for example, if Ncuti Gatwa to appear, I think it becomes confusing. In some circles, I think it becomes confusing, and it's a bit like, oh, okay, well, this was clearly meant to be part of the plan, and now that plan has definitely changed. And it's all a bit like, oh, God. But if it's like Billy Piper, then you go, okay, fine. And it will be interesting to kind of see that character, like, how do they even... What are they? Like, how do they react? How are they with people? But I think it would just deter too much from the series and the storytelling and become just a platform to kind of reintroduce Doctor Who. So I'm kind of hopeful that it's allowed to tell its own stories. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be references. Of course. Or there might be like something to like, oh, if only the Doctor was here, but they're not. You know, like, I'm sure there will be some kind of reference to it, but I think an actual appearance, for me, might be a bit too much. But it could certainly happen, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder what they would do with it. If it is Ncuti Gatwa, I wonder if they keep it in the edit. Who knows? Because, yeah, like you say, it could be confusing. If it's Billy Piper, I think that would be a massive shock. If the Doctor appears as Billy Piper... I don't think they'd do that. I wouldn't mind it. Mate, you should see some of our comments. So one, tell you this, Jerome, there is not a lot of love for Doctor Who at the minute. I'll tell you that for free. Our comments are intense. Most of them go after Russell T Davies. But Dan and I have had a few discussions about David Tennant coming back, and people are like, no. But like we've been discussing for these past few years, I think the perfect way to bring back other Doctors is through spin-offs. You know, you could have David Tennant's... who's, on Earth, appear in The War Between the Land and the Sea, 100%. Oh, which brings me on to my next point. I'm so sorry. You go first.
Well, no, I was going to say, I mean, if there was going to be a Doctor appear, or, it had to happen, I just hope that, some sort of submarine emerges from the sea with... like the lead characters, and they just come out and they're looking for like someone to kind of give them advice, and it's Paul McGann. That's what I'd really love. I would absolutely I just want to see Paul McGann given his time to shine in just some form, and spin-offs might be the way for that to happen, because like they've they play around with the lore enough, they play around with everything. And they've done, to be fair, the way they have integrated some Doctors recently has been really clever. Like in Jodie Whittaker's final episode, where it was like the reflections and kind of like the Doctors who don't get as much kind of love and mainstream attention were given that space. And I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was a really, really clever way to do that. Or some of them do it as like cameo appearances for birthdays and stuff. Like there's loads of different ways to kind of bring these people to the fore. But I would personally love to see Paul McGann. Is it going to happen? No, absolutely not. There's no chance, but I would love to see it happen.
Well, two things. So just picking up on what you said, the best part of Ncuti Gatwa's final episode was that amazing scene between him and Jodie Whittaker. If they were going to bring any Doctor back for his final episode, bringing Jodie Whittaker back, I did not see that coming. That was like the biggest surprise of the episode for me. I thought it was so perfect. A really lovely scene.
Really nice moment for both of their Doctors as well. Like,
for both of them, yeah. Especially the two groundbreaking Doctors. So good.
Yes, yeah.
And then also, Paul McGann has apparently been seen around Bad Wolf Studios.
I heard this. I heard that there was, because they were talking about scheduling and he couldn't make an appearance at Comic-Con. Or sorry, he had to pull out of an appearance at Comic-Con, and they were like tying up the schedules. And they were going, well, that's apparently when like the Christmas special in 2026 is going to be filming, and people have been talking. And I would, because he's still, I'm not even going to try and guess Paul McGann's age because I don't want to insult him or anyone, but he's still probably of an age where he's kind of like able to do like running. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in be like one of the running Doctors. I mean, Capaldi could do it and all sorts, but like in terms of him getting like a fully fledged sort of, a kind of dominant appearance where it's not just a cameo kind of like sat or kind of talking scene, but where it's doing stuff. He's still very much capable of doing that, I think.
100%.
But It's interesting as well. This is probably a conversation for another time as well. But I'm intrigued by like the athleticness of the actors who have gone on to play Doctor Who, because if you like look at them over time, like I think it's just the way like television's changed and what people expect to see from like characters or lead characters. But it's like you look at the earlier Doctors and the scenes are far more about dialogue and advice and coming up with plans that kind of scupper villains, whereas the newer Doctors definitely rely more on athletic ability and kind of like physical prowess. And it's just, it's interesting to see that kind of evolution of the character. Like, would you be interested to go back to a Doctor that, and I'm not just talking physicality here, but I'm just saying, like, in terms of the way they outfox opponents, isn't just through, do you know what I mean, like energy, or kind of like displays of energy, whether that be physical or like mental arithmetic, where it's just like very fast lines delivered through speeches and stuff. Like, I'd be interested to see a Doctor. I kind of get that impression from like Joe Martin, as in there being quite a wisdom, or like a much calmer sense, a much more kind of like wizened sort of like, I don't need to do much to do you know what I mean, to like outplay you. It's more like chess rather than playing
That's some of my
rugby.
favourite traits of the Doctor is when they those kind of clever episodes, like Heaven Sent is a really good example.
Yeah.
Peter Capaldi in Heaven Sent is, I think, like a masterclass on how to play the Doctor, and that is less about big energy and more about the Doctor being clever, which I think is really cool. I'm glad you brought up Joe Martin, because that does lead neatly into my final point, which is, this is very nerdy. At the Doctor Who press launch for Series 2, Joe Martin was there and Michelle Gomez was there. And the Joe Martin thing paid off. It became very clear why she was at the press launch for this series of Doctor Who, because she was in the episode which was called The Story in the Engine. It was called The Story in the Engine. Now, I've said for ages that we haven't had a payoff.
Michelle Gomez is still in the box.
Well, we haven't had a payoff for that gold tooth, have we? We saw something with fingernails pick it up. So I think that if we are going to get a proper Doctor Who reference in the War Between the Land and the Sea, I think Missy will be in it. I think UNIT will deploy Missy to help with whatever the hell is going on.
I've got a feeling that...
Why was she at the press launch?
Well, people would just argue it's because she's part of the Doctor Who family, weren't they? That she got an invite. People will say that. But like, I've got a feeling that that's just never going to be resolved now, unfortunately. Because I feel like if you look at the stuff with like Susan, for example, and like how that was definitely meant to play out differently at the end of Series 2, and now it's kind of not. I mean, it might get referenced, which I think is a shame. I mean, I still think there's potential for Carol Ann Ford to regenerate, and I think that might have been one of the plot points, is that because obviously like that's someone who can't, play the character for much longer, sadly. But I think that I get the impression that might have been in the offing. The idea that Carol Ann Ford would regenerate and there would be like a new Susan, and that could potentially be like a new thing that could be explored. And maybe through Poppy, potentially. But I'm interested, the whole tooth thing. I mean, there is the reference to the Master, and then people were saying, well, was it the Rani who picked it up? And then there ended up being two Ranis, and was it something to do with the tooth? And all of these things. There were some theories going around that Susan actually picked up the tooth, and it was like there's loads going on. But I don't know. Maybe this is what Christmas will be. Maybe this is where it's going, because
true.
It's. I mean, obviously, the Master is going to return, or Missy is going to return at some point. I would love to see Michelle Gomez return. She's been one of the best iterations of the character in possibly ever. I think I think from her first episode to her last, she was like magnetic on screen. Like, genuinely just enjoyed watching her, like, every time. But like, there's others as well, and like, I think it was really good. And I was about to say something there, but I'm not going to, because of our third co-host, Daniel, because of reasons that may or may not be revealed through a future podcast episode. But yeah, I don't know. But there is a part of me that thinks I think some of these ideas are just going to get pushed to the wayside because of the fact that storylines haven't come to the fore. But we'll see.
Yeah. We'll see. Because there are two things that are still hanging over the tooth, and then they keep talking about the boss, remember? The Meep mentioned the boss.
The boss.
And then Anita in the Ncuti Gatwa's final episode mentions the boss. So that needs a payoff as well. So either 2026 Christmas special wraps up this era of Doctor Who, Russell T Davies' second era of Doctor Who, and they just neatly draw a line under everything, or he is continuing, because like we said at the start of this episode, his words to Empire magazine saying that he wants to show the BBC what this universe is capable of doesn't sound like a man who's giving up his position as showrunner, which I'm all for. I think the past few, I'll tell you what, Jerome, our comments aren't going to agree with this, but the past few series of Doctor Who have had some real, some things have been, not so good. Like, I didn't really like how they dealt with the Rani. But we've had some banging episodes. Like you mentioned earlier, we had
Lux,
which was amazing.
That was a great episode, yeah.
What was the other one? The Ruby Sunday solo one in series 1?
Lucky Day.
No, it wasn't Lucky Day. Was it Lucky Day?
The Yards one.
73 Yards, yeah.
73 Yards,
or 72. I can never remember. And also, I'm also thinking about the sequel to Midnight as well. I thought was very good. So I think we've had some really, really strong episodes, and people are sort of forgetting that. And what I'd also say is all this hate towards Russell T Davies. Like, I don't think I've lived through an era of Doctor Who where the showrunner of Doctor Who at the time hasn't been dragged through the mud by its fans. I just think it's... Russell T Davies had it in his first era. Stephen Moffat had it.
Do you know what it is, though? I think there's been a lot of... I think there's been a lot of... I think that the current state of the world has been a big influence on a lot of episodes recently, and I think that is very divisive for people in terms of those who just want to watch the sci-fi element and enjoy kind of that side. And I think like some people have been saying like they feel like it's too preachy, and I think that maybe is where people kind of sort of draw the line and things. And for me, the most important thing for me with any sort of Doctor Who story is the storytelling. The storytelling is what's important, and sometimes those stories will have really subtle messages. Sometimes those stories will have really like slap you round the face, kind of we're talking about this. But as long as the story is strong and it's kind of clear and concise, then it's enjoyable. And those things also contain, things that you'll find in every episode that are always the best ones. A good villain. Like a villain that really kind of is defined and clear and kind of challenges the lead character in some way. It kind of, it challenges them mentally, or it challenges them however.
Like Omega.
Don't even get me started on Omega. Do you know what, like, Omega, like... But this is what's interesting, going back to your theory about the boss. Because Omega in some aspects you could relate as to being like Marvel's big bad, as like Thanos, in terms of like power rating, right? In terms of being this god that like created time and was kind of like the father of the Time Lords and all this stuff. Like in terms of like power rating is quite high, which makes me think, because like when you look at the legacy of all other Doctor Who villains, Omega or whatever you want to say still comes at like the top of that. So it'd be interesting to see like, well, who do they choose? I think the boss, if we do get a reveal, is going to be a new character. I think it's going to be someone we've not met before, and I think like it could be something like, do you know what? As long as it's not something like the boss is actually the Doctor, like as long as it's not something like that, do you know what I mean? Or it's like evil Tennant. Or something. Although actually Matt Smith has talked about coming back as playing the Master, hasn't he? And with everything, I mean, you look at Disney and you look at the Marvel Universe and Robert Downey Jr. like playing Tony Stark and now coming back as Doom. Like maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe it'll be like it's evil Doctor. It's like a former Doctor like Matt Smith who's coming back to like, but he's actually like the Master has taken a face of the Doctor or something. Who knows?
Here's my prediction. They do close off Russell T Davies' second era with 2026 Christmas special, and the big boss, the big bad, is Rassilon, who's been reimagined as a big, gutless CGI monster. That's what I want.
I just that whole, there was like 10 minutes in that episode where like that was revealed, and then the Rani is just like, see you later. although Anita Dobson,
she's still knocking around.
She's still around. And actually, I thought she was really good as the Rani. So it will be interesting to maybe that was the plan. It was to actually have Anita Dobson as the main one, but almost doubt herself. I don't know. It's just messy. It's messy. And I think that's the issue. It's messy and needs kind of some TLC.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Well, thank you for joining us on another episode of Who Doesn't Have a Podcast. If you liked our discussion, please do subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok. Can't remember if we're on any other platforms. We are going to be discussing The War Between the Land and the Sea when it comes out. I imagine we'll probably do an episode by episode reflection. We don't use the word review on this podcast. Well, Dan does, but I'd like to see Dan write a better episode of Doctor Who.
And that's an episode that will be coming at some point. We're going to get Dan to write an episode of Doctor Who, and we will do a live table read here for all of you subscribers.
And you can all pick it apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, so brilliant. So we'll be discussing The War Between Land and Sea. That's really, really soon. And then, we will probably take a break till Christmas 2026.
Did you say 2026?
That's when it's airing. All right. Thank you for watching.
See you later.